what would be the top 3 practical grounding cable tips for modern RF noisy systems?
Oh, where do you start there? Look, I think there are some really good cable solutions that have grounding of the shield. And I think that would probably be the first place to start. Grounded, shielded cables would be a good place to go. But beyond that, it's very difficult because it depends on the particular system that's involved. It's a very difficult question to answer, as I'm sure a lot of people have found trying to reduce noise in their system.
Which speaker loads best reveal Halcro's strength, and which loads are the toughest?
I don't think there are any tough loads for the Halcro amplifier. Greg Borman did a review of the Eclipse a few years ago, and one of the things that he mentioned in the review article was that the speaker was remarkably invariant to the load. We've used the speaker with inefficient loudspeakers, we've used them with highly efficient loudspeakers, and typically the shortcomings of an amplifier are exacerbated by high efficiency loudspeakers because everything that the amplifier does seems to be magnified by a high efficiency loudspeaker. And we've found that really there's no loudspeaker load that troubles the amplifier. I've got a pair of old Apogee Duettas. I love them. They're fantastic loudspeakers. They had a reputation as an amplifier killer. And the impedance goes down to 1 ohm or a bit below 1 ohm in places. And I've driven it by a prototype of our amplifier, just not even with that power supply, with a linear power supply that I was developing for another project. And it posed no problem whatsoever to the amplifier. So I really don't think there's a load that these things would have trouble with.
Is there an occasion that someone will not hear a big change upgrading to Halcro? If so, what would it be?
For me, when I listen to the Halcro amplifier, there are things that I don't hear in the music that I hear in other representations. Some people might prefer their amplifier. If it's a very high-end amplifier, it could be just as good. But what I miss when I go from the Eclipse to something else is the fact that I'm not hearing the distortion. It's uncanny. When you first hear a Halcro amplifier, it's a bit puzzling because there are things in music that you hear that you expect to be in the music. It's actually not there. Things like the intermodulation distortion, the crossover distortion. Crossover distortion creates this sort of time-dependent phase error. So that affects your sound staging. And that's one thing. So you'll find that with the Halcro, the soundstage is rock solid. You can pick every instrument. Every instrument has the right size and scale and depth within the mix. So that's one thing that people might notice. The other thing that they'll notice, is, as I mentioned, is the ghost notes. With zero intermodulation distortion, you don't have these sum and difference products that happen around 2 notes. So you don't have them around a very complicated mix. And those are the things that are probably a little bit unnerving when you first hear the amplifier. But when you sit back and you listen to it and you engage with it and you understand the musicality of the product, it's that I miss when I go back to another amplifier. It's the muddying of things that happen around the real music.
In the next 5 years, what's the biggest unsolved problem in amplification?
Amplifiers are very, very good at the moment. I don't think I could answer that. We're just going about our process of expanding our range. So we're trying to maintain as much of the technology as we can at a lower price point. We're also building out the range. We're looking at the phono stage, as I mentioned, and also some digital sources. So for us, we're probably going to be focusing more on that wider system than the high-end performance, although we do have a few ideas around how to make the Eclipse even better. So for us, I don't think there are many big challenges other than those subtleties around improving that particular design.
Do you believe the next leap is new topology or better implementation?
For us, it's probably better implementation in general. There are a few changes that we could make in the topology that would make those incremental advances. So yeah, that's where we would sit, mostly with incremental advances. The fundamental topology of that amplifier, I think, is quite solid. Although, speaking to Bruce, he does have some new radical ideas that might be a big step up in terms of performance, but that's a new topology and that's a completely new design from the ground up.
Why did you decide to use a switching power supply for the high-end amplifier?
The switching power supply really comes down to power factor correction. With a power factor corrected power supply, you have the ability to pull current from the mains in phase with the voltage. So you can actually deliver far more power to the circuitry with a power factor corrected supply than you can with peak rectified. And also, in a continuous sense, and it's a bit of a complex technical argument, but if you have a very high power amplifier that's driven from a linear power supply, it's counterintuitive, but the higher the power of the amplifier, the less power you can actually deliver into low impedance loads. And that's because when you have a much higher power amplifier, effectively what you're saying is the rail voltage is higher. As the rail voltage increases, the current capacity to be driven must naturally be less. So a very high power amplifier can actually deliver less continuous current to the load than a moderately powered amplifier, but a power factor corrected amplifier can deliver more again than both.
Switching power supply makes a lot of noise physically and RF-wise.
There's an incredible amount of filtering there for removing that. This chamber here is purely power supply. There's a lot that goes into that power supply, and then there's filtering between multiple levels of filtering between the power supply in the cabling up into the amplifier circuit.
Doesn't cable become the source of the resonance at all?
I don't think it does in this particular case because the cable it's damped on its path up through there. But I mean, everything affects the sound, but I don't think that's a significant factor in here.